Number 8. The Raid on Bruges. During the early morning hours of April 23, 1918, the British Royal Navy made an attempt to completely block the Belgian ports of Bruges, Zeebrugge, and Ostend. The raid was planned in total secrecy, with the intention of sinking outdated ships at the canal entrance. They also wanted to stop German vessels from getting out of the ports. In doing so, the British hoped to stop their enemy from threatening Allied control of the English Channel and the southern North Sea as a whole. The actual assault came after a failed attempt at raiding Zeebrugge a few weeks earlier, which was cancelled at the last minute when changing wind patterns made it impossible to cast a sufficient smoke screen in front of the oncoming ships. During the second try, the Allies managed to sink 2 out of the 3 block ships in the thinnest section of the Bruges-Ostend Canal. But this was not where they originally wanted to sink them, and within days the Germans were able to navigate U-boats in and out of the canal at high tide to get their resources out. There was also a second blocking attempt that actually helped slow down the U-boat traffic, which was never fully restored to its past levels. While the raid on Zeebrugge wasn't a total success, it taught the Allies a couple of valuable lessons that came in handy decades later during World War II. Number 7. Balaclava Submarine Base, Object 825. During the chaotic arms raids that took place between the United States and the Soviet Union after World War II, in the early stages of the Cold War, both superpowers prepared for possible attacks from the other by establishing ultra-secure, heavily fortified military bases around the world. The Soviets established one facility referred to as Object 825 in the small oceanside town of Balaclava on the Crimean Peninsula, an area that has historically functioned as a Russian military port for centuries. Built underground as an official naval installation in 1957, the base was invisible from the perspective of the sea, concealing it from the prying eyes of watchful enemy forces. During the 4 years it was being built, builders blasted away tons of rock to create a 2,000-foot-long tunnel that connected different sections of the facility. The base was designed to withstand the force of a large nuclear attack and was equipped to effectively respond to one as well. It also functioned as a central repair center for the Soviet Black Sea fleet of submarines. The site was stocked with enough food, water, and other basic provisions to supply its 1,500 staff members for about a month in the event of a nuclear strike. For maximum safety and security, a large set of doors and concrete reinforced gates blocked each section of the base. Object 825 finally closed in 1993 after the Soviet Union crumbled. In 2000, it fell into the hands of the Ukrainian Navy. By then, the site had already been significantly looted and damaged, all of its metal having been removed for scrap pieces. It became a museum in 2003. Russia seized the Crimean Peninsula back in 2014 and is now reportedly considering the possibility of restoring the submarine base for future military use. Number 6. Arc D0 Bunker. During the early 1950s, Yugoslavian dictator Josip Broz Tito came up with the idea of establishing a remote bunker to serve as an emergency shelter for him, top officials, and military leaders. He tasked his army with building the secret facility at the base of a large hill in what is now Bosnia and Herzegovina. Construction started in 1953 and took 26 years. Amazingly, the builders managed to keep it completely hidden from the public, and it remained a secret until Yugoslavia broke apart during the 1990s. Officially named the Armiška Ratna Komanda, or Arc D0 complex, the horseshoe-shaped bunker had over 100 rooms, including living quarters, offices, conference rooms, planning rooms, and everything else needed for the government to operate in the event of all-out warfare. There were 2 kitchens, 5 bathrooms, cable TV access, an operating room, and a communication center. The bunker was built to sustain a 20-kiloton nuclear blast, and it was stocked up to keep about 350 people alive for 6 or so months. It was climate-controlled too, and it had its own water and electrical systems, along with backup systems that could be implemented in case of failure. Tito died in 1980, just 1 year after construction finished, and the bunker was maintained but for the most part not used. During the Bosnian War, it functioned only as a supply base. At one point, there were plans to blow it up, but someone rigged the wiring. Today, the site is preserved in its original state, making it one of the few remaining undestroyed Yugoslavian historic landmarks. Number 5. Battery 223. There's a mysterious concrete structure along the United States Atlantic coast in Cape May, New Jersey, and to say it looks out of place would be a major understatement. Locals know all about it, but if it's your first time seeing the strange construction, you might be surprised. Officially called Battery 223, the building operated as a harbor defense battery for the U.S. Army's Fort Miles military installation during World War II. It was built in 1943 as part of a bigger modernization program. This saw the construction of multiple fortifications along the country's east and west coasts. With 6-inch thick reinforced concrete walls and a large blast-proof roof, the battery was designed to withstand direct hits from powerful battleships and aircraft. The structure was hidden by sand and dirt. It was also equipped with 6-inch guns that had a 9-mile range. Fortunately, those guns were never actually used to fire at an enemy. Battery 223 was officially decommissioned in 1944 as the war turned in favor of the Allies and advancing technology rendered the site obsolete. The Navy used it for radio communications for a short time after 1958, and in 1962, it became part of the Cape May Point State Park. The site looks much different now than it did 77 years ago. When the battery was first built, it was roughly 900 feet from the shoreline. Today, it sits right up along the water thanks to coastal erosion and rising sea levels, and it's no longer covered in dirt since it's no longer a secret, although greenery still grows all across the roof. Would you explore a secret bunker if you had the chance? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the video so far. Number 4. The Alvira Bunkers. The rural village of Wisetown, which was later renamed Alvira, was established in 1825 in central Pennsylvania. At its peak, 165 landowners called it home. The village had many facilities such as a church, a barber shop, and a general store. When the U.S. entered World War II after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in late 1941, the federal government made it a priority to produce war materials and to establish storage facilities for surplus supplies. During the spring of 1942, authorities took possession of 8,000 acres of land, including Alvira, for this purpose. Although the citizens of Alvira were bought out, the government apparently told them that they'd be able to return one day and that they'd find all their buildings exactly as they'd left them. But this proved false. Residents received cash payouts and instructions to move. The feds then proceeded to flatten the buildings to the ground before constructing an ordnance depot where the town once stood. Betty E. Yoder, whose parents were some of those evicted from Alvira, told the Daily Item in 2017 that her parents received a measly $2,400 for their 58-acre plot of land and used it to buy another farm somewhere else. Officially named the Susquehanna Ordnance Depot, the new facility consisted of 149 igloo-style bunkers that were used for storing TNT. It didn't take long before the government realized they overestimated their need for the bombs, so they emptied out the bunkers and divvied up the parts of the land to new owners, including military and prison owners. The portion of the property containing the bunkers was eventually turned over to the state of Pennsylvania and designated as a game reserve. Most of the Alvira bunkers are still standing today, but they're not always noticeable thanks to the brush and foliage that camouflage them from view. Some of the bunkers are still accessible, while others are welded shut. Those that are open tend to be heavily vandalized, and although Alvira's houses were torn down, some of the stone foundations are still visible. Number 3. Marionthal Bunker. Similarly to the other countries who became deeply entangled in Cold War hostilities, Western Germany prepared for the possibility of nuclear warfare by building its own top-secret bunkers, able to house its top leaders and officials if an emergency ever arose. The Marionthal Bunker, found roughly 16 miles south of the city of Bonn, was arguably the most important among the country's covert operating centers. Built inside 2 abandoned railway tunnels between 1960 and 1972, the Marionthal Bunker was successfully hidden beneath remote vineyards and forests. It was so well concealed that some have even described it as West Germany's best-kept secret. The facility was about 361 feet beneath the slate rock and consisted of an east and west section, which were separated by a valley and connected by a narrow passageway. Each section was split up into smaller subsections, and the tunnels connecting them were lined with concrete, had 2 levels, and were equipped with more than one emergency exit just in case. The bunker was designed to withstand an atomic blast and remain self-sufficient in the event of a nuclear war. It had autonomous power, fresh air and water purifying systems. If violence were to break out in the world, the Marionthal Bunker would have been protected by military units stationed nearby. Above all, the facility was sprawling. Altogether, it contained almost 900 offices and 936 dormitories, and it was capable of accommodating 3,000 or so people for up to a month without help from outsiders. Despite its impressive features, the site was abandoned in 1997 after the decision to relocate the capital of reunified Germany to Berlin was made. All that remains of the Marionthal Bunker today are its gutted and unsealed tunnels, along with its access buildings which have been welded shut. Number 2. Georgia Nuclear Aircraft Laboratory. Hidden in Georgia's Dawson Forest, the Georgia Nuclear Aircraft Laboratory, or the Air Force Plant 67, is a former United States Air Force testing facility that also served as Lockheed's nuclear aircraft testing site. It was built during the early 1950s, and the remote site's main purpose was for developers to determine whether creating a nuclear aircraft was actually a realistic goal. Because the facility's nuclear reactor had no shields, employees had to retreat into underground bunkers anytime it was used. According to rumors, the radiation was so strong that all the trees in the surrounding forest lost their leaves completely. The Georgia Nuclear Aircraft Laboratory closed in 1971, over 50 years ago, yet most of what went on there is a mystery to this day. All that's physically left of the facility are the concrete pilings and husks that were forgotten and left behind, as well as the laboratory's foundation and the remnants of a strange, smaller building. Parts of the site remain fenced off and inaccessible to the public, just as they were when they were used, albeit a little less closely guarded nowadays. The underground tunnels and bunkers that once housed personnel when the reactor was in use have been filled in, but people continue to search for them. There's supposedly no detectable radiation at the site, but we're still not sure if we'd be brave enough to explore the property. Would you? Let us know in the comments below. And at number 1, Bantal. The remains of a sprawling Soviet airbase called Bantal can be found in the vast Gobi Desert, 19 miles from the nearest town. A crumbling arch marks the entrance to the property, which has old barracks, aircraft hangars, monuments, supply depots, an overgrown 2-mile-long runway, and more. The concrete is cracked, its metal is rusting, and vegetation has reclaimed many spaces. You could say that Bantal looks like it was abandoned much longer ago than it actually was. From the 1970s to the 1990s, it operated as the first line of defense against a potential invasion from China. Like many of the USSR's bases, it closed when the Soviet Union fell. The entrances to the old apartment buildings have mostly been sealed off or blocked by collapsed staircases, making the interiors inaccessible to curious visitors. A group of explorers managed to bypass these obstacles and get into one of the buildings back in 2013. But they mostly encountered garbage left behind by squatters instead of anything important or interesting, although they did find a few remnants of past residents, including old Soviet newspapers and wallpaper. Nomadic families are known to occasionally set up camp at Bantal, where they live between and not within the buildings as their cattle graze among the ruins. There are several other abandoned Soviet bases throughout Mongolia, including one in Choibalsan. During their days of operation, the areas surrounding the bases consisted mainly of military personnel and their families. After the Soviet Union collapsed, the local population at Choibalsan shrunk from over 300,000 to only 39,000. Turning entire neighborhoods into ghost towns. Thanks for watching. Which of these secret bases would you like to visit the most? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.